Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon for our webinar. Everyone's having a good day out there, and just wanted to introduce my speakers here. I'm Lori Gebert with Asset Vue. I'm head of sales here, and I've got two fantastic speakers with me today that I'd like to introduce to you. First up, we're going to have Shauna Kenyon. She is a ServiceNow certified business process consultant at CDI LLC. She's specializing in hardware and software asset management implementations, from inventory audits and asset tagging to spearheading accounts across diverse industries like finance, healthcare, and government verticals. Shauna's over 2 decades journey, 2 decades, is in ITAM is a broad expanse on hands-on expertise that lends well to the conversation of RFID tagging. She's based in the Detroit, Michigan area, which I understand is not warm today. I'm sorry. It's not warm today. And she'll share her experience and use cases for RFID tagging and how it can benefit a successful overall ITAM program. So thank you, Shauna. And before we kick it off to her, just want to introduce Brenda Brady here as well. Brenda's a sales director at HIT Global, focusing in the Southeast and Central U.S. regions. Her background's in electrical engineering, and she's worked many years as an applications engineer prior to moving into the sales side. She's got 8+ years of experience in the RFID world and has worked with multiple asset management technologies. She's based in Greenville, South Carolina, which is warm today, I believe, and will be giving us an overview on the different RFID applications and application tags. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the stage over to Shauna. So without further ado, Shauna, you're on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm so happy to be here today. I'm very excited to talk about my favorite topic, which is IT asset management. I like to joke with people that I have an IT asset management heart. So, when things don't go the right way, we're not following processes, then my heart breaks a little bit that side. So I like to joke around about that a little bit. For me, I want to talk today about the hardware asset lifecycle and how RFID tagging can help with managing assets and part of an overall program within hardware asset management. As a business process consultant, my job is to ensure that I am setting up my clients for success and ensuring that they are able to manage each piece of their assets throughout the entire life cycle of what's going on in their environment for each asset. So to talk a little bit about that, I'm going to share my screen here. And we're going to see a little bit of information about the asset lifecycle. So when we talk about the hardware asset lifecycle, there are several phases, and the actual names of phases kind of vary from person to person who you're talking about in the asset industry. But in general, these things are the things that we need to think about when we go through asset management. We have the planning and acquisition phase where we're trying to decide what we want to have in our environment, what equipment we have, what models are we going to use. We have our inventory management phase where we are keeping all of the assets that we have purchased in inventory. We're tracking them. We're having serial numbers and locations and models and everything appropriately managed in an asset repository like ServiceNow or Asset Vue. Then we're going to be able to have our end users request assets and we'll get them deployed to them, give them the right information that they need so that they can use their assets to do their day-to-day work. And then while it's out in the environment, we're doing ongoing maintenance and monitoring, and we're auditing things that need to be audited and ensuring that things are working appropriately. And then finally, we have to talk about my favorite topic, which is retirement decommission and disposal, which is something that I've worked on for a very long time. Looking at all of these different things, we start back over as soon as we start to talk about the retirement phase and decommissioning and re-imaging things and moving things and redeploying. We're talking about planning and acquisition again. And it goes back and forth in that cycle all the way through. When we talk about the concept of inventory management here, that's really where our tagging comes into play at that first glance. So inventory management within either a data center or even a stock room are things that need to be managed appropriately as part of the life cycle. Most companies have several different issues with risk as far as financial risk, security risk, where are my assets, how much am I spending on assets, how much do I have there? And being able to know exactly what you have in your inventory is critical to a functioning business and to ensuring that you are meeting those risks and not having impacts from a financial or a security issue. So we talk a lot about chain of custody within inventory management. Where is it? Who has it? Where is it going? These kinds of things are questions that can be answered by RFID tagging, as well as just general inventory management best practices of taking a look at our assets and auditing them regularly and reviewing the information that we have on them and ensuring that it is accurate and up to date as possible. Assets that are in a stock room, not currently deployed, they are usually the most risk to loss, theft, ending up missing. We can't find them because they are things that aren't being actively used. We can't actively monitor through some auto discovery service, and they're out there and they're not out there and being used by a person every single day. Finally, data center assets are probably the best candidate that I know of for RFID, and that's what actually got me excited about RFID tagging back in the day when I first started learning about RFID tagging. One of my responsibilities as an asset manager in a managed service industry, I was responsible for doing physical inventories and physical audits of data centers and of just general locations and sites. And as I was going through them and I was using my little hand scanner with just the barcodes that are on the assets, and I'm scanning each piece of equipment, and I'm trying to dig through the data center and open up pages and try to find all the information that I need, the serial numbers. I realized it would be a lot easier if I had something that would automatically get this information for me. Obviously, the best practice is to get it right when it comes in, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we just got to get those servers in there. We got to get them running. And so then it's like, well, we missed getting that serial number. So RFID tagging, I at that time, I was like, wow, this is a great technology. I wish I could use it. And then I saw the price tag back then. We're talking 15 years ago. And I was staggered. And I said, yeah, and my clients can't afford this for this kind of situation. But fortunately for us, there are a lot more affordable options now. RFID tagging technology has been working to make things smaller, easier, more efficient, and more economical for companies to be able to utilize them to track their assets, especially their IT assets, specifically in the data center. Data center assets are going to be the thing that everybody wants to look at for the most part, simply because we have all of our most important data on those assets. We are having all of our network traffic running through there. We need to make sure that we can track them and we know what's going on with them at all times for any incidents that need to be run against them, any changes that need to be run against them, and also just for in general, making sure that we're working through that hardware asset lifecycle with all of our data center equipment. So that's in and of a nutshell here. That's the benefits for using RFID tagging with ITAM. It allows for us to do a little bit more of an automated approach to that auditing process, to that review process, even to getting assets into our inventory and reviewing the data that's there. I specifically work in the ServiceNow instance right now, and there are ways that we can actually import and integrate with various different companies like HID and Zebra to be able to bring that data into ServiceNow for a more automated method of doing our auditing and tracking of data centers and locations in general. And there's all kinds of different ways to do that, which Brenda will talk about a little bit later. But yeah, so that's kind of a rough intro into ITAM and RFID tagging.
Yeah, absolutely, Shauna. I loved all the little laugh emojis that popped up when you were talking about.
I think everyone has gone through that time where they're trying to find a serial number on the back of a device and you just can't get in there.
Not there.
So. And you do not want to take your whole network down.
You don't.
That's for sure.
No, none of that's that's something you can do. While you were talking, I kind of question if I don't have a program in place right now, from an ITAM standpoint, how do I start? What should I do? It's a massive undertaking, right? Right, to do this. So I'm someone who's done this for 20 years. What would you recommend? What's your kind of best practice here?
So as someone who's done this for 20 years and who I've done it wrong plenty of times, trust me, we have a saying in my industry and in my area is don't boil the ocean. So You can't do everything all at once. So we have to start with some of the smaller things that we can do and take it really piece by piece. So the first thing that I would do if I were starting an asset management program, one, I got to get an idea of what do I have and what am I going to buy and what things am I going to use in my environment. A lot of times we're not creating our asset programs until after we've already made a lot of purchases and we've been established for a while. So in that case, looking at, let's get our hands around what we have. So that starts with a physical inventory and understanding everything that we have, getting all of that data into an asset repository like ServiceNow, Asset Vue, those types of things that are out there, and ensuring that we have the key data elements. We don't need to look for everything. We need to look for our serial number, our user who's using it, the location, model information. We need those basic fields. So start with the basics, and then we can work our way up. The key thing here is having processes for each one of these different life cycle phases, which is what my company and myself helps with, to help define what those processes look like. So how are you going to purchase new equipment and what are you going to purchase? How often are you going to do that? How are you going to manage your inventory? What kind of tags are you going to use? You're going to use RFID tags, right? And how are you going to store those? Where are you going to store those? In which different locations? How are users going to ask for equipment? And how are we going to get it deployed to those users? How are we going to maintain it? How are we going to audit ourselves and make sure things are going through there? And then finally, how are we going to retire thing, work with our disposal vendors and make sure that we're tracking and keeping an eye on those certificates of destruction and having all of that information in there. So step one is, what do I have? Let's do an inventory, figure out what's going on. And then step two is making sure that I have processes for each area. And then as I get both of those very comfortable, have that conversation and that relationship with all of the different people who are involved, because as an asset manager, I'm not on site usually. I'm not the one touching things. We've got our data center admins, our data center techs. We've got our field services engineers who are working with our desktop engineering teams and things like that. I'm not there hands and feet to work through that. I've got to work with those teams to make sure that they are able to do what they need to do, get me the information that I need so that we can all have a successful asset repository with very limited risk and financial and security concerns here.
Yeah. I know you touched on it, as far as like pitfalls go, to getting these set up. I know partnership's really important. You and I talked about that before. Just really getting everybody on the same page. These kind of systems. Anything else in the pitfall area, to look out for? Or is it really just getting, everybody aligned?
So it's really that foil of that don't boil the ocean, right? Yeah. If you try to do everything all at once, you will not have a successful implementation of any ITAM program. So again, it starts with the basics. It starts with very, very much using those things, but having those relationships with people and making sure that everybody understands their part and how they contribute to that overall success of a program is really going to be what makes it work and makes it work well. I've been a part of many asset programs where had a lot of interaction with the field teams and the folks who are the hands and feet. And I've had a lot of interaction not with them. We've had some struggles. And I can tell you in every situation, if we're all on the same page, things are going to be working much better. And we just work like a well-oiled machine after a while. It does take time. I think the thing that people think is we're going to throw an asset management system up and everything's going to be great. And I'm going to know everything I need to know all in 1 second. That's not realistic, right? No. It takes time because you are going to have to inventory things. You are going to have to make decisions on how you will manage things as you go forward. So it's not there are some real-time benefits you can get and some very quick ROI you can get on a lot of different things that you do. Just know that just like everything, it takes time.
Absolutely. Excellent point, Shauna. Thank you so much. I appreciate your overview. ITAM there. And to move into some more technical aspects of RFID, I'm going to send it over to Brenda to give us an overview there. Brenda, stage is yours. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm Brenda, and here at HID Global, I am laser focused on providing you with the best RFID hardware. So I'm going to share a little bit about use cases, tags, and even some benefits of RFID. So here we go. Just kind of echoing what Shauna said as far as our use cases go, by far our most popular is just general inventory management, right? You want to know what you've got on hand so that you can leverage that data to make more informed decisions in the future. You can also manage asset life cycle to see how long this hardware or these devices are lasting. Are they lasting as long as they should be? Or do you need to go back to maybe some hardware manufacturers and say, hey, you know what? You advertised a 10-year lifetime. We only got 5. That's some money you're leaving on the table if you don't have that data. Lastly, service and maintenance monitoring. That's also huge, right? You want to do preventative maintenance, and you want to make sure you're servicing what you need to service so you don't have catastrophic failures. And so some legacy technology that we've used instead of RFID in the past have been like manual inventories, which is super painful, and barcoding. And so if we take a look at this case study that we did here at HID, you can tell that you're not just saving hours, like in some cases, you're saving days of time in just this inventory process. And this inventory process can happen 1, 2, 3, even 5 to 6 times a year. So you're saving days upon days. That enables you to have more time on your hands to do other more value-added things. So if we look at this scenario of 10,000 IT assets, you would have spent 50 hours manually counting them, 16 hours doing barcode inventory, or just 4.4. And so it's funny hearing Shauna, like, oh, I wish I had something back then to make it quick and easy. And so she's kind of wishing she had this magic wand. And that's kind of what I think of RFID as, is this magic wand that you literally wave. These handheld readers, you literally wave them and you're picking up thousands of tags in just a matter of seconds. So what are some results, some tangible results that RFID can give to us? Of course, they improve our asset visibility. You can see what assets you have, how long you've had them for. You inventory, you have it accessible, by a touch of a button. You ensure greater compliance to your financial and accounting requirements. So you make sure that everyone's working well. All these groups are working well together. You're all communicating, and you can do it in a great, easy to present manner. Reduce the number of lost or missing IT assets. And the beautiful part about RFID is that now, as pricing has improved in the last 15 years, ROI cycle is actually rather short. So I would say we're hitting ROI within a year, properly deploying, taking it step by step, a bite at a time, like Shauna recommended, which I fully agree. We'll see that ROI cycle really rather quickly. You'll also get some improved service level agreement management, right? Because you'll have this visibility on your IT assets. And so these service level agreements that you have with your hardware providers are something that you can just leverage a little bit more and make sure that they're committing and delivering what they commit to. And lastly, some greater data security. Of course, you want to know what you have on hand at all times. So how do we read RFID? There's 3 main ways that I like to read RFID in IT assets in data centers. So first and foremost is this handheld reader that I showed you. So these are really easy. They have a nice trigger. You literally just hit the trigger and you wave your magic wand and you're reading thousands and thousands of tags in a matter of seconds. So this is a huge benefit over something like barcode where you have to individually, read or scan every single one. I also have some options of like these smart carts, right? And robots that are kind of going through these aisleways of massive data centers. And so we can put some fixed readers on those mechanics, on those robots, on those carts, and make them kind of automate your inventory process so that you're seeing it multiple times a day, almost to the point where you're providing real time, you're right, almost real time information. And lastly, portals. So portals you can see on the rightmost photo here. And that's where we install fixed readers on either side of doors or any choke points. Any forklifts or any carts or people with assets in hand that pass through will get picked up rather easily. So once we know how to read your assets, then we'll kind of move forward and we'll say, okay, well, what tags do we need that will fulfill those read requirements? So I wanted to share with you a few tag ideas and our most popular ones within this segment. Starting here on the left, our Adept 400 data. This is a rather easy to install, great read range, general tag for IT asset management. You can see here in the front, it's really popular for putting it on these servers, on the bezel of these servers. They're easy to see, and you can even add logos or anything else that you need. Additionally, our Sentry family of tags, they're like a more durable version. They're PCB-based hard tags. They have a really small footprint, and they're very well known to have a really great read range for such a small footprint. So it's a very low ergonomic impact. They're available in a ton of sizes, and they're very easy to install. And these two here are UHF options, by the way. So we're reading at a distance. Okay. I also have IQ on metal labels in a variety of sizes, frequencies, and different read ranges. So I'd say they go up to around 15 feet, but they can do more. Of course, the larger the tag, the larger the read range in general. But they're easy to install, and you can even run these through a printer, an RFID printer, and personalize them to your content with logos or barcodes or human readables. Though RFID is, in a sense, an upgrade to barcodes, there's still some transition period there. And so we like to provide multiple ways and some redundancy, right, to read these assets. So I think it's important to have something that you can read visibly with your eyes, like a serial number, have a barcode on there for those data centers maybe that are in that transition period. And then you also have that RFID. So there's multiple ways of reading and achieving that data on an asset at any point in time. A more interesting tag, a more niche tag, we'll say, are these seal tags. And these seal tags get hung off of by a little cable on different areas on your assets. And the cool part about these tags is that they're tamper-proof. And so if there's anyone that tries to remove the tag or say open an area that they shouldn't be opening, this that area could be linked together by this cable. Tag will actually let you know that next time you prompt it with your reader. It'll tell you, hey, someone has been messing with me. Please take a look. So you can go and make some proactive decisions and activity based on that notice. So those are rather cool. Lastly, think about all these servers and all these IT assets, but what about the cables? These cables is really what connects all the data. So whenever I go into these data centers, I see a lot of times just this massive rat's nest of cables, and I'm like, how do we ensure that doesn't happen anymore? So while I can't guarantee it won't happen anymore, I can at least give you a way to track them all, and so you know what's in that rat's nest. So our Sentry cable tags made these in a variety of colors and even ODs, so they can fit any size cable, but they all work with the same one tag. So you can buy one tag and outfit it in all these different clamshells to fit whatever cable needs that you have. Read range, like 20 feet, right? And so super easy to install, and they're on there forever. You can step on those suckers, nothing happens to them. So they're very durable. Another interesting thought is, how do we ensure the right cables get connected in the right location or to the right bus bars? In those cases, we've also come up with a really low read range tag, right? Sometimes we think we want the longest read range, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we want to read just one tag at a time. And so in this case, we use an HF-based tag, which is almost tap to touch, tap to read. And we built that into the Ethernet cable itself. So it's discrete, you don't even know it's there, and you ensure the proper connection every time. So now that we know what we're tagging, right? The question is always, what are you? Who are you? What asset are you? What's your serial ID number? And so now I hear the market coming back and saying, I don't want to just know who you are. I want to know how you're doing, right? Are you too hot? Are you too moist? These are really important questions to ask in a data center. And if we don't address them early on, it can be catastrophic. So in the past, any sensor tags really were based on active technology. Active meaning there's a battery on board. And so these batteries, while they give us a better signal, also mean limited lifetime, right? You have to replace the battery at some point in time. And there's just a little more liability because batteries can be a little tricky. And they're very expensive. So in the past few years, we came out with a passive RFID sensor solution that you can see here on the screen. So passive meaning there's no battery on board these tags. We can do temperature or moisture sensing, which is the most critical in this IT environment. And the sensor data gets populated right in the EPC field. The EPC field is the fastest to read default read memory in RFID. And so you're not needing any special hardware. You're not needing any special firmware to read hidden little memory banks within the RFID tag. And you can get going with whatever hardware you have already in the wild, right, in your deployment. So these have been really interesting for us, and we really see a lot of promise moving forward with these. We've had some great pilots, and so I hope to deploy some more. So that is all I had from my side regarding some use cases. So I hope that shed some light there for you on RFID, and that's just really just getting a toe in the water. So if there's any other questions, I really encourage you to reach out to one of us. We'd love to chat a bit more and help you out.
Just scraping the surface with RFID. No, absolutely, Brenda, that's excellent. I appreciate the overview there. Couple things is I had for you kind of while you're going through, somebody out there, I'm ready to take the plunge, RFID, where do I start? where do I start with RFID? Like there's so many options, like to your point, we've just scratched the surface here. So, maybe I'm just using serial numbers, and maybe was using barcodes, I'm ready to do RFID, why even begin?
Yeah, it's good to take a step back and make a strategy before you just dive right in. So I always ask, what are you really trying to achieve? What is the pain that you have today that you're trying to solve? And we approach it just kind of in a pragmatic nature that way. So step by step. So once I know what you're trying to achieve, maybe you tell me, hey, I want to know what I have on hand at all times. I'm like, okay, well, how are we going to read that data? How are we going to capture? Are you using robots? Are you using carts? Or do you have someone to physically walk around with a held reader? Is that what you're prepared to do? So it's really, what are you trying to achieve and what's your pain point? How are we going to capture or read some data? And then lastly, what are the tags that are going to fit to give you that read range and that data required? So really step by step by step. I think that really, when you sit down and think about it, you're like, well, also what software am I using? You reach out to Asset Vue and say, hey, how can I leverage your existing software platform, make this happen, make it easier for myself? Yeah.
No. And, you touched a little bit on tags. I know you guys have lots of tags. As like the doing tag process goes, how typically, start a conversation, someone, what's kind of your process look like there?
Yeah. Sometimes, it's funny that tags are kind of the last thought in the RFID network building. People think, oh, we'll just get any tag. But when you start thinking about it, there's a lot of variables that are important. There's memory capacity, how much data do you want to locally store on each asset? Footprint, how much real estate do you have on your IT asset? Most of the time, it's not much, right? You want something that's really discrete, really small. And then normally they say, I want something that's this tiny, but I want this massive read range so I can read them all in a matter of seconds. And so I'm constantly battling and balancing that act of how much space do I have and how much read range can I achieve out of that space? So I can do a lot with that, but I can't change the laws of physics. We do have some really great tags that I would say are really ergonomic. They can be large if you want them to, print on them if you need that as well. And there's really a tag for everything. So when you're unsure, this is a good leaping pad, but absolutely reach out, and I'm sure we can have a more, we'll say, intimate conversation regarding your exact use case.
Yeah. So much, Brenda. I appreciate the overview. I'm sure the audience does too. I see a couple questions that popped in here. I kind of went to get back and grab those. If either of you'd like to jump into either one of these, feel free. I'm happy to field them as well. One I think had, let me go up here just a little bit. RFID tagging, typical ITM user example, and how often to scan assets and how. Brenda, I don't know if either one of you would like to take that. Shauna, you want to?
Yeah, I'll take it first, and then if Brenda wants to add anything to it, that'd be great. Sure. I think this really goes to what Brenda was just saying, right? It depends on what your goal is in tagging, and depends on what you're looking to actually scan. My experience, the best case for a typical user would be a data center employee, someone in that data center who is looking at those equipment and needing to get that information as far as using the tags and working with the tags specifically. As far as how often to scan it, it really depends on what your needs are. So for general best practices, you want to do your scans regularly so that you can ensure that you have everything accurate, and anything that is not accurate, you can get fixed. So whether that's once a month, whether that's once a quarter, whether that's once a year, it definitely should be less, like more frequent than once a year. But as long as meets your needs, what exactly are your needs? And that's, Brenda was talking about earlier, making sure that you have your priorities for why you want these tags and how you want to use them so that you can get those answers. But in general, I would say the users are data center staff, actually your field services staff that are in stock rooms and working with your equipment that way as well. So, Brenda, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would just say, at a minimum, your audit intervals. That's an absolute minimum, right? So if your audit demands once a year, then please, at a minimum, do it once a year. But I would really recommend 2n+1, right? So if your audit intervals is once a year, I would times 2 and add 1. So I would do it even 3 times a year, just to make sure that you get the hang of it and that your team is refreshed. They have it top of mind on how to do this, so that when it's mission critical to achieve this audit, you're not fumbling. And as far as how the assets are scanned, it really depends on how your data center is set up. So those three methods of scanning that I shared, whether it's with a handheld reader, a more automated method like the cart or a robot, that's a very sophisticated method,
Yep.
or the portals, right? So do you even have assets constantly leaving and coming in? You know, that would be a question I would ask. Do you really even need a portal? For many, I'll say a handheld reader is step one. They start there and then they kind of add on the rest if needed.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I would just say, you know, from Asset Vue standpoint, while, you know, working with someone, you know, decide how often to do these things, all these questions come into play. You know, do you have in place that you can scan, you know, makes sense? Does a fixed reader overhead make sense? You know, it just depends, you know, how often do you want the reads? You know, those kind of factors come into play. And it's kind of customizable, I would say, you know, if I use, you know, this is what we kind of determine on that. Question, how does Asset Vue integrate with fixed portals or carts? I will say on that one is I have some more kind of technical documentation. So if it's okay with you, I saw you came through on that one. I'd like to send that to you. If we could. Just gets a little bit in the weeds on that one. I don't want to get too far away and take up all of the time. So I will send that one to you. I've got two more here. And these look like they might be more for you, Brenda, HID. Are environmental tags limited to reporting only when reader excites them? And if so, what is the use case to know temp or humidity only at a point in time?
Yes. So the short answer is yes, only when they're excited. And because these are passive tags. So only when a reader prompts it, the tag actually uses the power emitted by the reader to read the chip, and it reflects that power back to you. So when you're actually reading it, will you get the temperature or the moisture data? So if that's all you need, and just say, hey, at my audit intervals, I just want to know what that temperature or moisture is, and you're good to go. If you want it more often, then we would recommend installing some sort of, you know, more automated reading method. So whether it's like this overhead reader, like Lori mentioned, which would just prompt all the tags within a certain vicinity at a predetermined interval, then you can have that temperature or moisture data, you know, multiple times a day if that's what you need to do. And that can be done totally automated. Yeah.
Okay. And follow up on that one. Brick tags, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. So does HID have brick tags and fiber patch cables? We have brick tags and a lot of different cables. Maybe the question is more, is it possible to install the brick tags and fiber patch cables? I'd have to look at it. It really depends on just, do we have a little bit of room in there to kind of add the tag? I have not come across a cable that I haven't been able to tag just yet. There's always a creative method of attachment. So I'd be happy to look at a photo and just provide some further advice.
Excellent. More message. I have one more on here. I'll jump into this one real quick. Is RFID ITM useful in outages situations, power down, etc.? That is an interesting one. Do you want to speak to that one in particular?
So in outage situations, I mean, of course, these data centers are all well equipped with some backup energy sources, right? They're not going to just crash if the grid goes down. But I would say, yes, you know, there's a variety of reasons on why you'd want to monitor during an outage situation. You might want to, if there's an outage, you know, was it a hurricane? Moisture might be a concern. Outage, do you want to make sure that they're getting removed when they shouldn't be removed? That's a concern too. So as long as you have some backup power source, I would say yes, it's definitely a good idea to monitor in outage situations. Still use handheld, you know, back-powered readers and do a more, you know, held approach or just more manual approach. You do have enough backup power to power these fixed readers, and that can do all the work for you. But I would definitely say yes, it's beneficial. Shauna, do you have any more?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and that's because those tags have all that data in it, right? It exists already there. So being able, it does really give you that. If you lose power, let's say you're using one of those overhead scanners where you're able to do that scatter shot, do the opportunity when you won't have that available and you want to go and do everything check. So even if everything is down, you can still check what's on those tags as long as you have that battery power. So I agree. Yeah. I think it's really a helpful thing in the outage situations.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And there's a certain amount of data that you can store locally to the tag itself. So say you do have a power outage, and in some cases you lose connection to the cloud, right? To the software that houses all of these fields and all this data and information on your assets. You can still encode a decent amount of info directly to that tag. So, you know, it's critical to know information in those cases.
Yep. Helps. I'm assuming I didn't see any other questions come through, so I think we're good on our Q&A. I want to thank the audience, for their attendance today. I want to thank Shauna and Brenda, expertise. As saying before, Vue obviously the ability to use the asset management solution with RFID technology. Got some follow-up emails with contact information for everybody on this call here. That's sitting today. We welcome the opportunity to do a personalized consultation. We'd help assess, what your current process is, what that looks like, the opportunity to, optimize it, change it up. And for those of you who don't have a system in place, we obviously welcome the opportunity to discuss. We'd be looking for where you are today, kind of a plan we could put together for you going forward. So by all means, reach out. We'll send some follow-up information. We recorded this call. I know that was a question in the beginning, so we'll send that for sure. Feel share this, teams, and we thank everybody for their time. Have a great rest of your Wednesdays today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.